Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated economist here. So, recession. Everybody seems to be talking about the recession. And it was inflation, but all the inflation has forced the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates, which is going to cause the consumer to stop consuming as much, and this is going to cause a recession. This seems to be the common theme out there. Now, I have a tendency to pay a little bit more attention to the occurrences that are taking place inside the market, not so much of what people are actually saying. And one of the things that a lot of people look at as far as a recession indicator is the 2-year 10-year. When the 2-year yield starts to pay more than the 10-year does, this has been a precursor to I don't know how many of the previous recessions, but it's a common indicator for a lot of people. Now, I remember an Alan Greenspan interview where they asked him about this 2-year, 10-year, and how he feels about the indicator of this as far as an inversion and being a precursor to a recession. He said that although it's a good indicator, what is a better thing for him to look at is the 5-year and 30-year. And now this is something that we have talked about in previous videos. In fact, I think it was just in the most recent previous video. And if you go and you look at the chart right now, you're going to see this thing is so close to inversion. I mean, it is about ready to take place. But what it was Alan's Greenspan's statement in it. Like, go, and I'll put the video down in the description for you guys. And go into, like, in that link, if you go to the four minutes, a little after 4 minutes, I guess, about 4.5 or so, is where he starts talking about this particular indicator, this 5-year to 30-year. And what he says is that when you see that spread, he said what that is corporate management's willingness to invest. He gets a little bit more detailed into it, but that's ultimately what he says, is that that's corporate management's willingness to invest. So go and look at that chart, that 5-year, 30-year, and take it back to the previous recession just before it took place, because you're going to see that the 5-year, 30-year, it dipped down and had its bottoming probably in the middle of 2018, but this last recession didn't kick in until 2020, so almost a year and a half later. Well, go and look at that 5-year, 30-year right now. It is lower than it was back in 2018. It is bottom. I mean, it could go lower right now. It hasn't inverted yet, but it's about ready to. Could go lower. I'm assuming this is corporate management's unwillingness to invest at this period of time, right? According to what I'm interpreting from Alan Greenspan. So I got to thinking, okay, well, what is it like correlating to the housing industry right now? Well, what I'm seeing in the housing industry is that you're seeing a lot of the mortgage rates going up, and this is causing a lot of the home sales to come down. Well, if the home sales come down substantially, well, that's going to put a fear into a lot of people as the price of homes starts to come down. They're thinking, hey, maybe I could sit on the sidelines and wait a little bit to see if I can get a better deal on a house. And if you own a home that you were thinking of selling into the future, thinking, man, these prices are really good, I should take advantage of this stuff. If you start seeing the house prices drop, then that might expedite your idea of getting that home onto the market a little quicker, so it doesn't lose any more value before you have a chance to sell it. So between those two, and then on top of it, like the completion of homes, so like trying to get new homes onto the market, this has also become very difficult. But at some point, I see that there's been a backlog of homes that have had issues in completions, which are going to come into complete. Like, they're going to meet that completion stage and come onto the market. From what I understand, a lot of those homes are being sold before they have a chance to get there. But if the inventory begins to build because of the dropping of prices and the fear of continuing dropping of prices from the buyers out there, well, then we might start seeing a lot more inventory coming from those backlogs of incompleted homes. On top of that, we also got more home building permits being issued right now, so there's a lot more starts that are starting to take place. All this is headwinds for like housing price increases. So as far as like the lumber side of things go, lumber is very expensive. I think it closed today just slightly over 1,000 per thousand. This makes for very, very expensive framing material. Pretty much it's about as high as it's been. Now, it peaked out last year at 1,700 per thousand and crashed almost immediately down to 400 per thousand. It was the biggest drop in lumber history as far as prices go. Right now, we peaked out at 1,400 per thousand a couple of weeks ago, and we're sitting at 1,000 per thousand. Now, the issues that ran the prices up to 1,700 per thousand are different from the issues that took place that caused it to go up to 1,400 per thousand. Similar in nature, but not necessarily similar in cause and effects from the inventory depletions that took place originally to what is now being a supply issue, not so much an inventory development issue. Okay, so like when it ran up to 1,700 per thousand, if you had been following my videos, we were talking about an inventory depletion that had been taking place throughout all of 2019. Mill curtailment, shutdowns, all the lumber yards, distribution hubs, everybody was lowering their inventory dramatically. 2020 hit, COVID hit, lockdowns hit, stimulus checks hit, wiped out the rest of the inventory. So an already depleted inventory within the supply chain got nailed with a bunch of stimulus checks that wiped out all the rest of the inventory that was, well, not all the rest, but pretty much depleted what was little inventory that was going on out there. That ramped up production. As production started to ramp up and there was very little ability to fill in that supply chain, they were pumping out as much lumber as they possibly could. All the mills, all the distribution hubs, everybody was trying to fill that supply chain, and all of a sudden here at July of last year, bang, they got hit with a bunch of inventory, and that's what caused the prices to fall from 1,700 per thousand when you couldn't get it down to 400 per thousand. This time around, there's a bit of flooding that took place up in the British Columbia area. This bit of flooding, which was quite intense, knocked out rails and highways and caused an issue with the mills being able to not only get logs to the mills, but then getting that lumber out of the mills and into the distribution network. So there was a very big disruption coming from the British Columbia area just recently on it. But it's not just that. That was part of it. A bigger issue that was more distributed throughout the rest of the industry was the lack of transportation. These mills were producing, but they could not get away from the mill fast enough in order to fill the supply chain up. So as they were having issues getting that lumber away from the mill and into the supply, the prices started to go up on account of the demand. Well, now we're starting to see that the distribution is starting to free up and the transportation is becoming a little bit more available. As this continues to grow, we're going to start finding that the prices are not going to be up at the 1,400 per thousand as people are looking for this demand or trying to demand this lumber that is difficult to get. As it becomes easier to get, we're going to start finding the prices coming down, and that's what we're experiencing right now. How far they could go? I don't know. It depends on how much demand from the housing industry there is, but if we're going into headwinds with lower prices and higher interest rates, that might put that might put pressure on home builders. I mean, that's what I see happening anyway. Okay, uneducated economist, you guys let me know.